Is it live or is it minutes?
Which is us.
I'm gonna say it's live. Okay. What the hell? We might just accidentally have somebody else show up, but we can do a little to-do here. Should probably have a napkin because I'm gonna.
You didn't spill any?
Coming down the edge though. Thank you. And this way I won't. Put up. Okay.
Baruch
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pori hagafen. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who provides us with the fruit of the vine. And blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us his Torah, and he's given us the good news, the message of salvation, through Yeshua HaMashiach, whom we love and whom we will give all praise and honor to. In Yeshua's name, amen. Chaim v'Yeshua. And we have some food. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei. All right. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has given us various kinds of foods and some bread-type foods too. And we receive it with thanksgiving in Yeshua's name. Amen. Hallelujah. Okay, well, for those of you who are tuning in, we are in the Brit Chadashah study, and it's the book of Luke, and we are up to Luke chapter 8, and since it looks like we have about 56 verses, and we'll only go 5 around,
So you don't want to do 10? Be a little quicker?
I think we could do 10. So, we can do 10. I'll start us off with the first 10. As soon as I scroll back to 1. After this, Yeshua traveled about from town to town and village to village, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. With him were the 12, and a number of women who had been healed from evil spirits and illnesses. Miriam, called Magdalat, from whom 7 demons had gone out. Yochana, the wife of Herod's fiancé, minister Cuza, Shoshana, and many other women who drew on their own wealth to help him. After a large crowd had gathered from the people who kept coming to him from town after town, Yeshua told this parable. A farmer went out to sow seed. As he sowed, some fell along the path and was stepped on, and the birds flying around ate it up. Some fell on rock, and after it sprouted, it dried up from lack of moisture. Some fell in the midst of thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. But some fell into rich soil and grew and produced 100 times as much as had been sown. After saying this, he called out, "Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear." His Talmudim asked him what this parable might mean. And he said, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of God, but the rest are taught in parables, so that they may look but not see, and listen but not understand."
The parable is this. The seed is God's message. The ones along the path are those who bear, but are the ones who hear. But when the adversary comes and takes their message out of their hearts in order to keep them from being saved by trusting it, the ones on the rock are those who, when they hear the word, accept it with joy, but these have no root, and they go on trusting for a while. But when a time of testing comes, they apostatize. As for what fell in the midst of thorns, these are the ones who hear, but as they go along, worries and wealth and life's gratifications crowd in and choke them, so that their fruit never matures. But what fell in rich soil, these are the ones who, when they hear the message, hold on to it with a good, receptive heart, and by persevering, they bring forth a harvest. No one who has lit a lamp covers it with a bowl or puts it under a bed. No, he puts it on a stand, so that those coming in may see the light. For nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed. Nothing is covered that will not be known and come out into the open. Pay attention then to how you hear. For anyone who has something will be given more, but anyone who has nothing, even what he seems to have, will be taken away. Then Yeshua's mother and brothers came to see him, but they couldn't get near him because of the crowd. It was reported to him, your mother and your brothers are standing outside and want to see you.
But he gave them this answer: My mother and my brothers are those who hear God's message and act on it. One day Yeshua got into a boat with his Talmudim and said to them, Let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they set out. As they were sailing, they fell asleep. A windstorm came down on the lake, so that the boat began to fill up with water, putting them in great danger. They went and woke him, saying, Rabbi, we are about to die. He woke up, rebuked the wind and the rough water, and they calmed down so that it was still. Then he said to the Talmudim, Where is your trust? Awestruck, they marveled, asking one another, Who can this be that he commands even the wind and the water, and they obey him? They sailed on and landed in the region of the Emissaries, which is opposite of Galilee. As Yeshua stepped ashore, a man from the town who had demons came to meet him. For a long time he had not worn clothes, and he lived not in a house, but in the burial caves. Catching sight of Yeshua, he screamed, fell down in front of him, and yelled, Yeshua, son of God, what do you want of me? I beg you, don't torture me. For Yeshua had ordered the unclean spirit to come out of the man. It had often taken hold of him. He had been kept under guard, chained hand and foot, but had broken the bonds and been driven by the demon into the desert. Yeshua asked him, What is your name? Legion, he said, because many demons had entered him.
They begged Yeshua not to order them to go off into the bottomless pit. Now there was a herd of many pigs feeding on the hill, and the demons begged him to let them go into these. So he gave them permission. The demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, whereupon the herd rushed down the hillside into the lake and were drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the town and in the country. And the people came out to see for themselves. They came to Yeshua and found the man out of whom the demons had gone, sitting, dressed in his right mind, at the feet of Yeshua, and they were frightened. Those who had seen it told how the formerly demonized man had been delivered. Then all the people of the Gesserim district asked him to leave, for they had been seized with great fear. So he boarded the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged that he might go with him, but Yeshua sent him away, saying, Go back to your home and tell how much God has done for you. He went away, proclaiming throughout the whole town how much Yeshua had done for him. When Yeshua got back, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him.
Then there came a man named Yair, who was president of the synagogue. Falling at Yeshua's feet, he pleaded with him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. As he went with the crowds on every side, virtually choking him, a woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years and could not be healed by anyone, came up behind him and touched the tzitzit on his robe. Instantly, her hemorrhaging stopped. Yeshua asked, "Who touched me?" When they all denied doing it, Kepha said, "Rabbi, the crowds are hemming you in and jostling you." But Yeshua said, "Someone did touch me because I felt power go out of me." Seeing she could not escape notice, the woman, quaking with fear, threw herself down before him and confessed in front of everyone why she had touched him and why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. He said to her, "My daughter, your trust has saved you. Go in peace." While Yeshua was still speaking, a man came from the synagogue's president's house. Your daughter has died," he said. "Don't bother the rabbi anymore." You want me to finish it, or?
No, yeah, you can finish it.
But on hearing this, Yeshua answered him, "Don't be afraid, just go and trust him, and she will be made well." When he arrived at the house, he didn't allow anyone to go in with him except Kepha, the Kohen, Yaakov, and the child's father and mother. All the people were wailing and mourning for her, but he said, "Don't weep, she hasn't died, she's sleeping." They jeered at him since they knew she had died. But he took her by the hand, called out, "Little girl, get up," and her spirit returned. She stood up at once, and he directed that someone be given, or something be given to eat. The parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened.
That's something you just can't keep secret, I think. Especially if all those people who were the paid mourners, you know, the ones who were wailing and laughing after he said she's only asleep. If once after they saw the girl come up out of there, they've been like, where'd the dead girl go?
I think it's interesting in verse 39 that this man who had been previously possessed by demons knew exactly who Yeshua was. Because Yeshua says, "Go back to your home and tell how much God has done for you."
Yep.
And so what does he do? He goes back proclaiming to the whole town how much Yeshua had done for him.
He knew who God is, right?
He knew who Yeshua was.
That's right.
There was no question in his mind about it. And the demons knew who he was.
Yeah. Dave, you have anything? Anything come to your mind? I was noticing something about this demon-possessed guy. First, he begs to be left alone, not to be thrown into this bottomless pit. Then he begs to be released to the swine, to enter the swine. Then he begs to go with him. Who begs? But somebody who knows somebody can grant you something, or can give it to you. So from the beginning, this person knew Yeshua. As he came up to him, "What are you here, Yeshua?" You know, he didn't say, "You person who looks like a prophet, possibly, who might have ability to give me trouble." He knew that he could do everything that he could do, and everything that he asked, he knew he could be granted. Even when he said, "Please let me go with you," he said, "No, I got something better for you to do. You need to go and tell what God has done for you." Because that, you know, you may be able to find out now what that one person's, you know, proclamation did for the kingdom and for the message of the good news to be spread. Because if you really look at it, this place, Gesserim, the district, a great miracle happened. But what did they do? Get away! Leave, depart. You know, anybody in their right mind, well, I can say right mind, because he became in his right mind, right? That's what the word says. The rest of them probably weren't. Otherwise, they would have recognized the miracle and they would have been praising God, which is what usually happens in other cases where somebody is totally delivered. You know, the people offer up praise to God. No, who knows? When these people showed up, they saw two things. Look at the bottom, and some of them are like, there's my pigs, palms around. And the other ones are looking and going, isn't that the guy that used to try to chain and used to break the chains? Yeah.
That demon-possessed guy?
Yeah. And so they got this mixed mind, and somebody's like, you would, because they said, they came to see if what these herdsmen were telling was true. Now they're probably saying, you're not going to believe it. This guy gets off the boat, right? He steps on land. As soon as he does, you know that crazy guy? Well, he runs up and he bows down. Okay, that's a sign right there. He runs up.
Shalom.
We're in chapter 8 of Luke.
Okay.
And we just got started. We just got started.
Okay.
He runs up and he bows down to the Yeshua, right? He bows down to him. And he goes, what have I to do with you? He's like, he recognizes who he is, and he's like, but he's not one of the normal townspeople, the ones who are like scared of him. He just recognizes he's the authority here. And that's something that we're going to see further on as we continue to read who Yeshua is and why he has authority.
These Talmudim that Yeshua have, they remind me a lot of myself sometimes, because right here in verse 22, adding the Son of Man, he's telling his Talmudim, because he told them, don't tell anybody. He said, because the Son of Man has to endure much suffering and be rejected by the elders, the head Kohanim, and the Torah teachers, and he has to be put to death. But on the third day, he has to be raised to life. When this all happens, it seems like they completely forgot he said that. And it's like, I do that sometimes, you know. God shows me something plain as day, you know, just like he's telling them straight up, this is what's going to happen. You know, God will show me something just as plain as day, and, you know, 2 months later, I'm right back to where I was. And, I mean, they're human beings, and God understands us. He knows that we have to be told things over and over and over again. I mean, how many times do you see the same story or the same theme of the story being recurred over and over and over again through the whole Bible? I mean, it's just always this choose life, choose death. You know, I want to be with you, but you need to do what's right. You know, I want to be with you. First, have faith in me so that I can help you do what's right. You know, that seems to be the theme, repeated over and over and over again through the whole Bible. Throw away your wicked things. Take on righteousness, so you can, you know, it's constantly repeated. But obviously, he's having to repeat that to us because we forget it all the time. You know.
This is another example where, because of the popularity of Yeshua, that there's a crowd again, this time so thick that, you know, they're pressing him, almost choking him from what the word says. I mean, can you imagine what that's like to be so just like and you just can't even walk.
Can't barely breathe.
He's trying to get
so much
to
pressure on you.
Yair's house, right? Because he says, okay, I'll go there. Now, do you know, and I believe this beyond a shadow of a doubt, that as soon as the 12-year-old girl died, Yeshua knew it.
Oh, yeah.
He knew it. And otherwise he wouldn't have been able to say, she's almost sleeping. But she'll be okay.
Right.
She'll be okay. So, 12 years old, this woman who, for 12 years, again, has been dealing, yes. Now, we all know what Leviticus talks about when you have a flow of blood, you're unclean, you know. So for 12 years, she couldn't do a lot of the things that maybe she had enjoyed doing before it happened.
She really shouldn't even have been in this crowd.
She couldn't get close, but she did. And everybody will say, you know, if somebody like that touches, you know, a tzaddik or a rabbi or something like that, you're like, but what happened was
Practically a sin to do that.
she immediately, her flow stopped. Now all she really needed to do was to probably go present an offering, and she'd be all set.
Right.
But he didn't even tell her to do that. He just says, you know, what did it say? Go, your faith, your trust has healed you.
Healed you, yeah.
Your trust has saved you. Go in peace, you know, in 48. So, interesting, you know, he didn't get like, oh no, I need to go cleanse myself, and
Right.
you know, it's like
Mikvah.
yeah. So, but he's Yeshua, so he can pretty much, you know, set certain standards in this case. Although we don't know, he may have done something like that after that. In fact, you could almost presume he would have, only because even his disciples will say, she just testified that she's had this problem for 12 years.
Right.
And she grabbed his clothing. Now, whether or not that's all inclusive of him, you know, people who heard it could have been thinking, what's he going to do? She just confessed. And so he's going to have to do it. I would presume he probably did, you know.
Well, if you think about it.
The temple was still standing, right? He
Yeah.
could have done it.
He goes over and the scroll's healed, right? And then where does he go? He goes and gets in a boat. So probably before he got in the boat, he probably took a little dunk and then got in the boat, you know?
Yeah, that's-
Said a bracha, did a little dunk, and then he was done, because that would have been my time, you know, so.
Although, that was before that, but still. I think
I'm pretty sure he got in a boat after that, too.
well, he probably, yeah.
He was getting in a boat an awful lot.
One thing which I was noting was, when he first departed, you know, to get into the boat, okay, now, I'm not sure if we even brought this up so much, but I know maybe you mentioned it, but he does what any good rabbi does, and goes to sleep, right? He takes a nap, right? And, what verse was that now? Got into the boat, 23, so they set out, and as they were sailing, he fell asleep. And then the windstorm came.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to see kind of a common thread throughout this, is that the people who are around him, especially his Talmudim, are recognizing that this rabbi has certain things in people in submission to him. You know, they see that the wind and even the raging waves
Mm-hmm.
have submitted to him. They're witnessing firsthand, you know, proportions of greatness that maybe only Moshe could have been, you know. He's the prophet that was prophesied. Can't you? Everybody's starting to see this, right? And people are getting healed. I mean, I wonder if they have any accounts of, you know, Moshe, you know, I'm sure Moshe probably prayed and people got healed, you know. It only makes sense, you know, that they would have brought him to Moshe. But he's calm. Sometimes if you read in different, you know, versions, it may say it was like still. Anybody's been to this particular lake will tell you that that place is never calm. And it can never be calm. I mean, you'd have to have like absolute, you know, everything would have to be on hold for it to be a calm lake. That thing is probably one of the most, torrenting
Did you go there?
places. No, I just know people who've been there.
Oh, and they say that it just never calm, huh?
Well, it's just very, very rough.
Windy
And it gets
area.
even rougher during certain times.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, a lake? I guess lakes can get pretty rough sometimes.
Well, I've been around some lakes that were pretty big. Like, if you look at Coeur d'Alene, it's probably a lot like Coeur d'Alene Lake. I don't know, it's never as calm.
So what do you think about verse 25? And I know you brought this up, but, you know, he says, where is your trust? Where is it? Where's your faith?
Yeah.
You know, where is it? You know, up to this point, they've seen a lot, okay? Maybe they're going to see a lot more, but they've already seen a lot. And where is it? I don't know, but what I just saw increased it. What I just saw increased my trust in you, at least, because he just calmed the raging water and the wind too. I mean,
Well, it's like he knew what they were gonna say next.
He always knows what they're gonna say.
Because the next thing they say, right after he says, "Where's your trust?" They're like, "Who can this be? He commands even the wind and the water to obey him."
Which to me is kind of, you may say, that's rude. Because they go, the rabbi just asked them a question, and they go, who's this guy? It's like, I'm right here. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm over here, guys, I can hear you talking.
Well, I don't think it's being rude. I think he just knew exactly what they were going to say, and so he like had them off the path beforehand, and was like.
So he commands even the wind and the water, and they obey him.
That's
Well,
like
the
Mary was
question-
talking about
the
earlier.
question, yeah.
When do we get to that point where this is like no big deal? It's like, oh yeah, well of course it's Yeshua. Of course he obeys. Of course the wind and the water obeys him. He's God, So
And you know something else? We don't see it here in this chapter, but after Yeshua, goes up to be at the right hand of the Father, and his disciples, his Talmudim, are also doing the things that he does, they will be recognized, they obviously were with him, with Yeshua. Because look how they act. They act just like their rabbi. And they start doing the same things that he does.
it'd be neat to see like one of them and see the mannerisms that they picked up from Yeshua. Just the ordinary little things that they may have picked up on, being Talmudim, that you'll see Yeshua doing. And eventually probably all of us, but I'm sure they'll lead the way on that one because they spent so much time with him.
I often wonder this verse 31, where it says they. We know who they are. They are the demons, because it's not one, it's many. In fact, the word legion, I looked it up again. I know this came up like in one of our previous Gospels, but a legion is 6,826. 6,100 foot soldiers and 726 horsemen, right? That's a legion. Hey, that's his name. Okay, well, that's a pretty big number. Okay, so they said, hey, let us go into the pigs. And so there was a herd of swine feeding on the hill. The demons begged him, let us go into these, and gave him permission. Now, you think there was enough for every one of them? I don't know. But did they not, for 1 minute, know what could have happened to them in that case? Because what is their main fear? They did not want to go into the bottomless pit, which was in verse 31. Not to order them to go off into the bottomless pit. That's what he didn't. He could have said, depart into the bottomless pit.
It's almost like he had mercy on demons.
But here's the thought. They're all in this one guy tormenting him, which is pretty unfair if you think about it.
Yeah, the poor guy.
You don't need a legion,
Right.
to do
It
this.
only takes one.
So there's this one guy, and Yeshua's probably thinking, I want to get rid of all of you in one shot.
I think today they call it dissociative identity disorder, but yeah.
Oh, really good. So you have one of those kind of orders.
Not a multiple personality disorder?
That's the new term for it.
Okay.
DSM calls it dissociative identity disorder.
So, but my question is after they drowned, the demons didn't drown. They had to find some other place to go. Maybe that's when they decided, oh great, now we have to go to the bottomless pit because this was our only way out. So now the inevitable has come. So they're going to be there now. If they didn't go there straight then, Yeshua probably was, just waiting. Okay.
If you fall into a bottomless pit,
You just keep falling.
you just keep falling.
Yeah, that's right. And that sounds kind of peculiar. I think.
Well, it makes me wonder if they were begging to be put into the swine because if, and this is what I kind of wonder, if the swine died with the demons in them, my question is, do the demons just return to where they were before they ever possessed this man? In other words, roaming here with Hasatan.
It's an interesting question.
And that's why I think maybe they were begging to be put into the pigs versus being cast out, because being cast out, it would bring them to
Their final
premature judgment of where they're going anyway.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because if you
Sure.
read in Revelation, it talks about Hasatan being bound in chains and thrown into the pit. You know, and I think that's the same pit they're talking about here. They know that's coming. And so when they saw Yeshua, they're thinking, oh no, here comes the pit. Please don't throw us into the pit. And Yeshua's thinking, well, it's not time yet. So I'm going to send them into these pigs and return them back to where they were. Because that time is coming soon enough.
So, does anybody remember, you could probably find it here in a few seconds, but when Martha and Mary, whoever came to Yeshua and said, hey, you know, the disciple or our brother who you love, he's very sick, he's about to die."
Lazarus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And he's like, okay, I'll be there.
Yeah, right.
And he takes about 4 days to get there. And
It's all
he
good.
died on the first day, so he's been dead, what, 3 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, that wasn't something that Yeshua said, all right, now, we gotta wait until everybody's gone, because I don't want to do this in front of a lot of people.
Right.
He did this
He
in
just
front of a lot.
did it, yeah.
So sometimes when he raises the dead, he does it for a purpose. Now, the purpose when he raised his 12-year-old daughter had a great impact on, well, first of all, the parents, for one, because they knew that she died. And then for those who were the closest, who were the ones who were outside the room, the paid mourners, because, you know, a lot of times that's what they did.
Yeah.
And so these people were mourning, and then when he came in, they could have said, wait a minute, that's that rabbi. But they didn't even realize who he was or what he came there to do. They didn't realize that, first of all, the president of the synagogue is the one who asked him to come into their house.
Right.
You know, even though he was told before he got there, don't worry, it's over. You know, they sent messengers. You know, at that point, the synagogue president guy could have said, well, I appreciate your time. You know, I've got to go mourn now.
Right.
You know, what's dead is dead, you know. She was like, nope, let's go.
We're going to take care of this.
We're gonna see this little girl come back to life. And
Ain't nobody stay dead on my watch.
so he does this raising the dead. You know, of course, what is it doing is it's solidifying his position as a Messiah
Right.
in certain people's eyes. Each time something was done, you know, people were just keeping track, like a scorecard, raised the dead, somebody born blind, or, you know, deaf and leper.
Lame,
And-
able to walk, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're checking the scorecard, and it's like, wait, he didn't just do everything on the scorecard, but he like done more,
Right.
and he did it in multiple ways.
How could we deny this is the Mashiach? Right.
Yeah, so, and because now we have so much testimony that we're just like, it's so easy to see it.
You
I'm
pretty
glad
much
they
have
wrote
to
it all
be,
down.
pretty much have to be blind, naked, and wretched to not figure it out.
Blind,
Wait, some people haven't figured that out
wretched.
yet.
I find it interesting that the very last verse, it says he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. This seems to be a pretty common response for Yeshua.
Well, it's because he's not doing it for like popularity.
Right, but
He's
still.
doing it to glorify God. Well, actually, I mean, if you really look at most of the cases, he's doing it because he has compassion for these poor people. That's ultimate. And most of the time, when you look at the places where he says, "Don't tell anybody about this," it was purely an act of compassion. It was like, oh man, he just felt it. He's like, oh, this person needs to be healed, and I can't stand to see him in this state of being, and I gotta heal him. I just can't not do it. I love him too much. And then when he does it, everybody's like, oh wow, and he's like, oh, keep it down, keep it down.
Sure.
This is about this person, you know?
I'm just saying it's,
It is fascinating.
for Yeshua, it's a pretty typical response, because he
It
says
is.
that a lot of times.
So,
It also can be a good example for us too, you know, in situations where Hashem is blessing our lives or blessing those around us or doing miracles through, you know, us, you know, we're probably supposed to act the same exact way that he does. Look, don't broadcast this. This is, you know, this isn't for the purpose of glorifying me. This is for the purpose of Hashem's love for this person, you know. That's really what it's all about.
So, what's unique about the Yair's daughter situation is, sometimes what'll happen is whoever wants Yeshua will send somebody first. Go get him, right? But this guy, nope. It says, then there came a man in verse 41,
Yeah,
named
well.
Yair, who was president of the synagogue.
It's interesting that he wasn't a rabbi.
He was president of the synagogue,
president.
falling at Yeshua's feet. What is this again? We're seeing this when you submit yourself. You recognize who's in control, who's in charge, and who has authority.
You recognize majesty, yeah.
And he saw this, he fell at his feet. Now, we've already heard what we're supposed to do, or what you're not supposed to do, at whose feet you're not supposed to, if they're not Hashem himself. You know? Because what happens when somebody bows down? No, I'm just like you, or I'm not who you think I am. Don't do that. So there you have somebody at his feet again. The demonized person at his feet again. The woman who got healed, who grabbed the tzitzit in the hem of his robe, at his feet again. And she threw herself at his feet when she realized that he's like, I want to know who touched me, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I know it happened. And he probably didn't have to say it more than once, because the crowd was like,
That all goes back to the demon-possessed man knowing exactly who he was. Go back to your home and tell how much God has done for you. So what did he do? He went away proclaiming through the whole town how much Yeshua had done for him. Yeshua. Wait a minute. Yeshua told him to proclaim how much God had done for him. He knew who God was. He knew who Yeshua was. He knew they were one and the same.
so he had a lot to say.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you think about it,
I can't imagine being in his mind, being tormented by all those demons. And then being released from that and being healthy in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I often wonder what the state of that town was. I'm sure we could probably check some history and see that it was a very fallen,
Probably,
maybe corrupt, maybe not even a lot of Jewish people there.
Like,
you know?
like maybe like officials taking bribes and things like that.
Sure.
But maybe maybe the pig is one of the foods that they eat. 'Cause it's-
Well, I mean, they're swine herders.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. So.
and they went back to the town probably mad that they lost a herd of swine.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It
'cause-
must have been a pretty big herd.
yeah, because they went back to the town and they told, they fled and told it in the town and in the country, and the people came out to see for themselves. Now, there was probably a combination of things. One, that there was a miracle that happened there, and two, hey, guy just killed all our swine.
And
Come
see,
check this guy out.
that's-
Not only is he,
But that's an important thing, because if you think about it, what's going on in the heart, okay, of some of these people,
Mhm.
right? In their heart. Maybe because the people who don't live on the hillside are probably the ones who own the pigs, okay? And that's their business, that's
Sure.
their income. And now, suddenly, they come, and as they're getting closer and closer, they're probably getting this panoramic view. They're seeing the shoreline, all these swine, they're just dead.
Yeah.
Floating on the shore, whatever, they're just dead. And then as they get closer and closer, they see what the trade-off was. The demoniac.
right. Now he's healthy.
He's healthy.
Great.
And we lost all this. They didn't like the deal. They're like,
No.
he can be possessed. I want my swine back. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right, yeah.
They're like, fix this, make it work. But like,
The
no.
reality is that.
So that's why
the
they're
wrong
like,
part, Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
Fear took hold of them instead of just praise.
Right.
They should have been willing to say, what a trade. You know, we have this man who's been troubled and
It does say that they fled. Yeah,
and
they
he
ran.
was tormented, and we were tormented. Every time he broke free again, we had to get like 40 guys in there to hold him down, to put chains on him again, you know?
Yeah.
And-
This Yeshua guy, he's in cahoots with him because he's doing better now.
Lucky's sitting there like he's not even himself anymore, which is right, because he was in his right mind. And that's what Yeshua came to do. He didn't come to save the pigs, he came to save the man who was bothered by the demons that went into the pigs. That could be a song. Well, probably not.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. So, in verse 16, 17, Yeshua was talking about light and not hiding light, not covering up light. I can't remember where it is, but in one of the other gospel accounts, he says something similar about a city on a hill. A city on a hill can't hide its light. So my question is, in that scenario, which I understand isn't Luke that we're talking about, I think it's Mark, or when he's talking about the city on the hill, is he talking generally, or is he talking about Jerusalem
I think he's talking about Jerusalem.
specifically? That was kind of my thought, that
We can look that up real
because
quick here.
Jerusalem is on top of a hill, so
I realized earlier, this is a little off subject, but I realized earlier why you guys were looking at me strange when I was talking about when he said that the Kohanim and the Torah teachers haven't put to death. That was chapter 9, for some reason on the wrong page. Whoops.
So it's in the Gospel of Matthew, and it's verse chapter 5, and I believe it's verse
there it is. I found
14.
14. Yep.
So you are the light of the world. A city located on a hill cannot be hidden. So we're talking about a city located on a hill.
Yep.
But if you look here, he's talking to a mass of people, because this is that wonderful chapter 5. You want to call them the Beatitudes or blessed. The blessed are these people. So he's telling everybody, blessed and blessed and blessed. Then he says, you are the light of the world, because he came as the light of the world. But now he's passing the light. So to say, you are the light of the world, a city located on a hill. And then it goes on just of what you were talking before. Neither do you light a lamp and put it under a measuring basket, or put it on a stand, and it shines for all who are in the house. So, and in this particular gospel, it talks about no one lights a lamp and puts a cover over it or a basket over it,
Right.
or hides it under a bed, you know, where it can't be seen, right? So, but what do they do with the light? Is they take it and they put it on a stand, so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
And it's not so everybody can see it, but it's so that it can make seeing easier and more clearer. So sometimes that can be taken even a step further. When we become his lights, we make it so his Torah can be seen. And we make it so
By the things that we do.
by our lives.
Right.
Yeah. And so if somebody needs to see, you know, and our praise goes to Hashem, but if somebody needs to see Yeshua and they're looking at us, then we better be doing what Yeshua does, so that they're seeing the true light and not seeing some deceptive thing, you know,
Yeah.
that is not leading them to the light, but leading them down a dark path to something else, which is, you know, not what we profess. So, yeah, good point, you know, to bring up about being light and how we don't hide the light, that's for sure. Anytime somebody asks us a question, we shouldn't be like, well, you know, maybe I might know God, you know. It's like, no.
Well, and Peter says the same thing too. Always have a reason for the hope that you have, so
Yeah.
that you may. And I forget how the rest of it goes.
Have an answer.
Yeah.
Have an answer
Yeah.
for the hope that's in you. Yeah, and I think that's something that every morning, you know, when we wake up, we should be thankful that we have life. And that's the good way to start your day, you know, in prayer to Hashem and with the knowledge that he's given us another day, you know. And it wasn't so we could earn $1. It was so we could be those lights that, you know, this world is not getting any better. It's getting worse, and people need to see the light. So,
Yeah.
Okay, well, that about wraps it up.
well, we still have about 10 more minutes
know,
or so.
I'm
But if does anybody have anything else? I mean, it was a long chapter. It had a parable, and the parable is a common parable. It's
About
in,
the seeds?
It's in a couple of the Gospels. It's not worded exactly the same each time, although the principle of the soil and the result of the seed, and then, you know, what it does or doesn't produce, and the reasons why it does or doesn't produce it are pretty much the same throughout. You know, along the road, the devil takes it away, which is the word, because it was in their heart, but he kind of snags it before it has a chance to actually.
Take root.
Because what does David say? Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against you, right? So here comes the word, it comes to their heart, and the devil goes, whoosh, he takes it away, and so they can't. But what's causing it to be taken away is, I guess, the question, you know. What is it? The taken away is that it's trampled underfoot, and it's trampled underfoot because, and then after that the birds devour it. I mean, that's the along the road guy.
It says his worries
Well,
and life's gratifications.
That's for the,
That's the one that's planted among thorns. Were you talking about the one on the rocks?
that was along the road.
along the road.
Along the road. So along the road, the devil takes it away from their heart, so that they don't believe, and then they're not saved. So that's the explanation of the parable. I guess I was reading the explanation before I was reading the parable itself. But that's just it, though. The parable, it's almost, when we read it, it makes sense. It's almost like, yeah, I would have got that. Yeah, sure. I would've.
Would we have?
I think it's possible after hearing it, we could say absolutely.
Well, we would have got it after he explained it, sure.
But do you think, now here's the thought though, when Yeshua explains the parables to his Talmudim, you know, it could just be the 12, or it could be a larger group of people, I'm thinking, because he did have the 12, but he also had a lot of people that always followed him. And how else did you get,
Well, it talks about 70 Talmudim at one point.
well, right, he sends them out, in pairs. So, that's more than 70, right?
Well, I mean, actually mentions 70.
Right. So when he sends them all out, that must mean that they were people who were qualified.
Right.
They were qualified to do what Yeshua told them. And so that tells you that they weren't necessarily the 12 pick. They were adequately able. Which says a lot, because he didn't individually select them, but they were the ones who he recognized as true believers, true followers.
And allowed them
They were the
to,
ones that were understanding the parables.
allowed them to follow him around and, yeah.
A lot of times when it talks about the seed, though, it talks about the heart too. And in the end, it talks about the one who had an honest and a good heart, who didn't just hear the word, but he held on to it tightly. Okay? The one who didn't hold on to it tightly is the one who had received it along the road, and it got taken away by the devil. Okay? So he didn't hold on to it. So now how can that be? How can you compare that today?
So maybe that's, if somebody's not holding on to the word tightly, maybe they're being apathetic about it, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It's like, this is interesting, but doesn't really affect me either way. And
I think sometimes when we think about it, if we're holding on to his word tightly, we're also going to be producing fruit, because that's the result. That's what the word says here.
At least in time, yeah.
It says when it falls into somebody who's an honest and has a good heart, they hear the word, they hold it tightly, and it brings forth fruit with patience. Now, another chapter talks about it like being 100-fold or something like that, but brings forth fruit with patience. That's such an important attribute of somebody who has the right kind of soil, because it tells me that they've had patience to get that way. They weren't somebody who wanted an overnight sensation, but they were patient to get there, and it lasted. And that's probably why their soil was primed for the seed.
So you're saying that you're not necessarily an advocate for experiential.
so maybe then these people with the good soil that produce fruit after having patience, maybe they're the ones who are willing to be tested and examined and go through trials in order to.
Willing is probably the result of just saying, "Here I am, Lord, and I'm not going to turn from you no matter what." Yeah, being a Job, but being unwavering in the tests that come our way. And what do we know proves something in us.
It refines us.
And so, if we don't see a test as that, then we're gonna feel like, oh, it's the devil, and he's rebuke the devil and all this, it's like, well, if that's the case, then Hashem rebuked the devil for me. and I don't have to go through this test. But if it's you, then I wanna learn what I want to learn from this. And that's a good result. Good point. Testing, trials, they're all for a purpose.
Yep.
Verse 18. Verse 18. Something was particular about that verse. Pay attention then to how you hear.
Well, we were talking about that earlier. Are you so in tune with the Lord that you can just sit and listen?
But how you hear.
Yeah.
What reason are you hearing or listening? How you hear. Because here's somebody who's, maybe they're hearing, but they're only hearing what they want to hear, and not hearing what they should be hearing.
What they need to hear.
What they need to hear, good, right?
Yep.
They're not hearing everything that needs to be listened. Because hear and listen, I think, are the same in this case here. Because I think in either in another section of this chapter or in a similar, I think it was in the beginning of this text, how you talks about listening. So I think it's the same Greek word is used.
Well, I think this is interesting too in the context.
Oh, he who has ears to hear, let him hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same. Listen is the same word in the Greek. So
This is interesting though, how because you can tie this together with the word for. It says, pay attention then to how you hear. For anyone who has something will be given more, but from anyone who has nothing, even what he seems to have will be taken away. So the question I have here is, what does hearing have to do with having? And the conclusion that you can come to is that when we hear the word of God, we gain something. So this something will not be taken away, but we will be given more. But anyone who has nothing, even what he seems to have, as in worldly things, materialistic things, that will be taken away. So that's why he's saying, pay attention to how you hear, because if you hear properly, you will receive eternal things, eternal knowledge, eternal wisdom. You will receive these things that will not be taken away, but you will receive much more of.
I thought that it just popped into my mind. We say the Shema all the time. And the Shema is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one, right? Hear in that phrase is more than just listen.
Right.
It means actually obey and do what is being said. And so if you apply that here, you actually obey and do what Yeshua tells you to do.
Well, how much more do you gain by actually keeping a mitzvah versus just learning about it?
Right. Yeah.
When you actually follow through and do Yom Kippur, how much you're actually physically there, you're physically doing it, you're physically saying the prayers out loud.
Physically
you hear it in
yourself.
your own ears. We're not just a spirit. We're a spirit and a physical body. Now, I think a lot of times people think, well, when Paul is talking about the flesh, he's talking about, this body. No, God made this body. The flesh is like the Yetzer Hara. It's this nature that we have to want to do things just for our physical well-being. And so when you have, this situation where it says hear, it's talking about hearing and doing. Physically going and doing something. If Hashem says to me, I want you to go buy 10 coats and go find some homeless people and put them on, I'll be like, well, yeah, that's a great idea. That'd be a really nice thing to do. I'll pray that those homeless people get some coats. That's not hearing. Hearing would actually be going down to the store and buy some coats and then take them down.
And then finding 10 homeless people.
So if we remember one thing which is really important about the whole chapter is that right now we're only reading one chapter. Okay, we used to do 2 chapters in this study a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. But it's great that we cut it down to 1 because now we can really explore it and get deeper. But what I like to say is context. Okay, everybody says context is king. Well, context is really important, especially when we read one verse and then like the verse that we just talked about, where it says, "Pay attention then to how you hear," which is verse 18 again. And then he talks about something. But if you're sitting there and somebody just told you, "Pay attention to how you hear," and it's not gently spoken, he is proclaiming this. Pay attention then to how you hear, right? And then he tells, nothing spectacular, but all of a sudden somebody comes up to him and goes, "Your mother and your brothers are trying to get you, but they can't because of the crowd." And immediately, what does he say? He goes, "My brother, my mothers, they're the ones who hear God's message and act on it."
And act on it.
Yep.
Exactly.
They
It's
hear
like
it.
the fulfillment of what we
They
were just
hear
talking about.
God's message and they act on it.
Yeah.
Now, that's kind of been our real theme for this part of the discussion is we need to act on what we hear. And if we're not acting on it, like you said, if we're not putting clothing or putting food in someone's mouth, then what are we doing? We're not acting on it.
We're
So-
listening, but, well, not even that, if we're ignoring what's
Well, and then,
being told to us.
But it all goes back to the sower again.
here's,
The seed fell on us.
yeah.
Did it fall in good soil?
Do we hear?
Did we hear? Did it produce fruit?
Mhm.
Well, and this is interesting too, is if you keep going down into, verse 25, where it says, then he said to the Talmudim, where's your trust? It says, awestruck, they marveled, asking one another, who can this be that he commands even the wind and the water, and they obey him? Wait a minute, the wind and the water obeying him, but we seem to think that we have any right whatsoever to disobey God?
All of a sudden, they're like, "Yeah, that's great. Look at all these people obeying our Yeshua, man. Look at these, bowing down to him. Look." And they're like, "We're the disciples. We're the chosen 12." Right?
And then Shaul had or not Shaul, but Shimon had a pretty big wake-up call when he denied him 3 times before the rooster crowed.
Yeah.
It's like,
Wait.
even the wind and the water obeys him, and I deny him 3 times. I mean, can you imagine the feelings? Oh, that would feel so terrible.
So
And I think-
embarrassing too.
I think it's the right place to be though. We need to recognize that that's what we come from. We come from the state of denial of the Mashiach, of the God of the universe, of whatever it is that we denied, his authority, in our disobedience. So we have to stay humble and we have to realize that we deserve death for that.
Mhm.
And Yeshua, is the only thing that saves us through his blood.
Yep.
You know what I noticed in this whole chapter is that Yeshua starts off doing something wonderful and he's being crowded, right? And so to get away from this crowd, what does he do? He gets into a boat that almost sinks, right? And then he gets out of the boat and he's faced by this legion, 6,000 plus demons, and then he gets rejected, right? He's like, then he goes back and guess what? They actually were waiting for him and they welcomed him. He goes, "I feel so much better." You know what I mean? So, but think of what he's going through. This is Yeshua, man. He's going from one extreme to his disciples are like, "We're dying in this boat. And you said, let's go to the other side." And we saw what happened there. That wasn't fun for us, Yeshua. We almost got probably kicked out of that town. They said,
Yeah.
"Leave, please. They're being nice. Please leave.
Yeah.
Go. We don't want you here." And he says,
Stick
"Okay."
around here much longer,
He's
it's gonna
like,
get pretty.
"I know where they like me. I'm going to go back to that place where I have a warm welcome."
I just needed to come over here and take care of this one guy and these pigs.
In one shot. So.
Yeshua was like, the bottomless pit or the swine, love your neighbor as yourself doesn't count for pigs. Okay.
So,
Like in the cartoon.
geographical question. Where is the Gerasene district?
This came up once. I think somebody
We
looked
looked
it
it
up.
up on a map.
North end of Lake Galilee, or?
Well, because you have the Galilee, which is
Uh-huh.
where the lake was, and
Yeah.
where he like a little trip across here to get to there, you almost like, probably couldn't walk it, it would probably have been easier to go through the boat, I'm guessing.
So is the Goyle the entire region around the lake, or is it just part of?
I think it's actually the
Yeah.
southwestern part.
I'm not 100% sure on that, so.
The lake at Galil, I don't know if you know that part, but it empties into the Jordan and then empties into the.
Dead Sea. Yeah.
So, would anybody have anything else to add? We can discuss before we close. And it can be important or it can be trivial, doesn't matter. Or it can just be important.
Yeah, don't say trivial, because I'll bring something up about a monkey or something like that. We don't even want to
Too
hear
late,
that.
too late. David, do you have something? Okay. Rolf?
No, I think I've.
Then let's close and somebody please close us.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your teachings, for your parables that you allow us to understand, that you explain through the words written down by your Talmudim. We thank you that you inspired their hearts to write these things down, that we could read them, and that we could understand your ways, and that we could understand you better. We pray that you would go with us, that you would send the Ruach to spend every waking moment with us, and every moment of sleep as well, Lord God, that we would be inspired by your words and your teachings, Lord. Just ask that you would give us an unction, Lord, to do what is right, and to do good things to others, and to be to others what we would have you be to us, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm glad we had company before. It was well spent.
We'll jump in your car, right?